Hey, everybody, and welcome to my EdTech Live. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful, beautiful Saturday. I know it's a little rainy here. We're going to have a little bit of a thunderstorm action going on, but regardless, we are here. We're happy. Our heart is filled with joy, and our cup is also flowing. So I've got my brain juice here, so we're ready to go. And we've got a great show today with the amazing and wonderful Amanda Macias, who is joining us today. And we're going to have a great conversation. You guys are going to get to know Amanda a little bit more as she's an instructional coach. She'll tell us a little bit about how things are going in her area and in her schools and the way they were working. But we're also going to get into just some light conversation, as Amanda has been a longtime supporter of the show. And I'm just really excited that she's here and we get to know her a little bit more. And I encourage you, my PLF, make sure you look out for Amanda on Twitter, connect with her. She posts a lot of great things, dealing with esports, with tech, with trainings, and all things badges too as well. So if you're ever looking for any PD or anything new that is out there dealing with tech, esports, and instructional coaching, she's definitely a great resource. So make sure you connect with her. So thank you so much for joining us, Amanda. How are you this morning? How's the weather in your neck of the woods?
I'm good. It's a little gloomy out today. It's in Southern California. Usually the sun's out by now. It's a little early for us here on the West Coast. It's 7 a.m. But yeah, it looks a little gloomy. I'm not sure if it's going to rain or just burn off by the end of the day. We'll see. We'll see.
All right. Well, I'm glad that you're here, my friend. And I see that you are sporting a My EdTech Life sweater
I
hoodie.
had to bring the swag. You know how that goes. I had to bring the swag today.
Oh, that is awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So, today, Amanda, we're going to be talking about, and the title of the show is just Igniting a Spark. And yourself as an instructional coach, I mean, really, all coaches out there that are working in this field as well. It's just that's something that we thrive on, that we love to do. We want to ignite that spark in our teachers, but we also want to ignite that spark in our students. So that's something that we'll be talking about today. So before we do, just introduce yourself as far as your context in education, where you work, years of service in education, and also tell us something interesting that our audience may not know about you.
Awesome. Well, I am an instructional support coach with K through fifth grade currently in Southern California and Fontana. If anyone knows where San Bernardino area is, that's right about where we are. I have also worked in second through seventh grade, so elementary and middle school experiences. And I just really love teaching and learning vicariously through our students. And so I kind of just really, really learn from them and go with the flow. I'm kind of one of those go with the flow type teachers. I just really, really find it passion for our students and education. And I also want to just share that knowledge that I learned throughout my 16 years experience with communities all over. So I just really enjoy talking to other people and as yourself and just sharing that knowledge collectively, because I think we have a very powerful professional learning communities and, as you say, professional learning familia. And something you might not know about me. I love Halloween. Most of my close friends know this. I'm a huge Halloween enthusiast. I like to break things and take them apart and make something new out of them. So we're always creating. We do a Halloween haunt at our home for our community every year. So that's kind of something out of the ordinary that you might not know.
Oh, well, that's interesting. That is awesome. And now, I think I did see something that you did post, and so I mean, this is something that you guys really go all out on. I mean, you put on like a production, right in outside your home and everything. So that is really cool. How long have you been doing that for?
Oh my goodness. We have been here for 7 years now. And every year it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. We started out with the foam stuff and just throwing it in the yard and putting up, some lights and tombstones. And now it's a full-on production. Like we go and we learn from our community. We're part of Cal Haunts, which is a local organization here that we all learn from each other. We teach each other and we just learn strategies from people who are actually in the haunt industry and make money off of it. So we kind of just have fun with
Wow.
it, and it's a year-long process. So Halloween is every day in our home.
Wow. So yeah, I mean, I can imagine just a production like that, going
Yeah,
on and planning for a whole year and then changing themes and things of that sort. And then of course kicking it up a notch every year. But I love what you
yeah,
said. One thing there is, you're still learning. You're still
yeah.
learning
Oh,
from
yeah.
this and you're learning from Cal Hans and you're learning from all these people in the industry. And so it's like the learning never stops, does it?
It doesn't. It totally crosses over between, like, work and life. It's just you find that creative passion and creativity within your life, and, I really love sharing ideas, like I said, with others. So it's fun.
Oh, I love that. And then you're absolutely right. I think on some of those aspects that you're mentioning, I know for myself, it seems like the lines are now blurred between my professional and personal profiles, where they're just kind of just coming together, and now it's like you're really where's the distinction? Because it's like, well, no, this was just like for family and other stuff, and no, this is just for work, and now it's like it just all blends together because it's all part of you. So yeah, the lines get blurred there a little bit, but that's great. That's something that you found that ignites your spark, with
Absolutely.
you and your husband. And I know your husband is also in the tech world, correct?
Yeah, yeah, he does things on the, he's kind of a real life Minecrafter.
Mhm.
He works for a construction company, and he does their IT department. So I get to do real life Minecraft.
That is awesome. That is
Yeah.
great. Wow. Well, yeah, you get to build stuff and you get to see all that and everything. So
Yeah.
that's great. Awesome. Well, I mean, I'm glad that you're here and again, just the conversation. I'm really excited. I know we were talking a little bit about it backstage, just kind of seeing how you're doing because I know you've just been back these last 2 weeks as I've seen you post on on Twitter and everything, as like you said, my familia, my personal learning familia, I definitely always check up, see how they're doing, and cheering them on all the great things that they're doing. But I know you've been back for 2 weeks now, and so just tell us a little bit about how that's working out, and through your eyes, through your lens as an instructional coach.
Yeah, instructional coaching, as I've known it, is kind of changed right now because we are going back. We've kind of switched over to just supporting the sites and what they need. And that could be anything from walking students to lunch and hanging out with them for a while, which I love because I get that kid time, right? I get that student interaction and having conversations with students. It could also be going in and supporting with assessing. So we are assessing here. We have to still finish those, standardized assessments that we have. I know, I know. I see your face. I feel you. I feel you. But yeah, we're bringing them back. We have about 7 more weeks of school left, so hopefully we can continue to use our technologies and things as we're going that way. We are in 3 cohorts, so we're actually hybrid. So we have a few students that are coming on Mondays and Tuesdays. Everyone stays home Wednesdays, and then Thursdays and Fridays, we have another cohort of students coming in. And we also have a cohort that's just staying home. So it's been still quite a challenge to transition from all distance learning into coming back with some students in person, some students still on the computer, some, trying to have that flexibility so that we're meeting with all of the needs for the students. But it's been interesting. I've been talking to a lot of students. That's kind of where where I've been. That's been keeping me there, and just having conversations with teachers about what they think is our next steps, what they really need has been good. But there are days where I'm running from 7 a.m. to 3:30 without taking a break, and then there's days where there's a little lull in that. So every day is new and different, just like before in teaching, but just in a different way.
Yeah. And like you said, you just kind of go with the flow. And one thing that you said too is that, right now you're also wearing many hats because
Mhm.
it's kind of like you're the Swiss Army knife of the organization where
Yeah.
it's like, hey, what do you need me to be or
Yeah.
what do you need me to do? And you can assist in those things. And I think, all hands on deck right now is pretty much for everybody at this very moment. But one thing that I really enjoyed that you said is you've been talking to a lot of students,
Mhm.
so I mean I think that that's great as far as the conversations, and as an instructional coach too as well, and as part of it an administrative team is just getting like you said, getting some feedback from them, like, how are they doing, not just jumping in, but seeing how they're doing, coming back and adjusting. But what are some of the things that you're hearing from the students?
They want to do one of two things: play video games and watch videos and like interact with content. I'm a huge proponent for Flipgrid. Anybody that knows me knows that Flipgrid is one of my back pocket tools. If I had to pick three tools, it would be Flipgrid, Wakelet, and Minecraft, and those are my three. They want to talk, they want to have conversations, they want to interact with one another, not just those students that are on campus, but away as well, because they're kind of missing sometimes that interaction with each other and that community that they've built online. Um, they want to play video games. They're asking, can I play, Call of Duty? Can I play? I'm like, you guys ask, here's how you can ask your teacher if you can have a chit chat channel in, because we use Microsoft Teams, have a chit chat channel in Microsoft Teams, as long as you guys are being responsible, with your languages and things like that. Maybe you can share your gamer tags, or maybe you can do that. They're always asking for my gamer tags and where they can find me and that kind of thing. So once they find out that you're a gamer and you're a teacher and educator, you kind of get those questions. But they want to play video games. They want to play like at school, like with physical things too, not just video games all the time, but they want to play on the jungle gym things that are there on the
Yeah.
campus. They want to run around, they want to dance. Um, and that's across the board, like from the small kindergartners all the way up to the fifth graders that I serve. But yeah, they want to have some fun time to play. I even my little budding artists, they want to do pixel art, and they want to learn how to draw and do different things. So we've had talks about anime and how you can have those careers, and it's a possibility. If you're a gamer, what do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? What kind of goals do you want to set for yourself? So start thinking about those things, because as you said, I'm a big proponent of
Oh,
esports. I really, really see those connections between esports and so many of our college to career connections and 21st century learning skills as well. So I've been having those conversations with students as well, and teachers too. Teachers might not right away understand that piece of it, but I think in having conversations with them as well and understanding, look, not everyone's going to want to do esports. Not everyone's going to want to do, whatever that assignment or opportunity is that you've provided for them. But having those conversations and saying, hey, let's try this, that has been really, really beneficial too. And getting feedback. Not only that, but me going in and being vulnerable and virtually supporting or in person supporting, if that be the smaller students, they appreciate the fact that I'll say, you know what, let's go try this together. But we might not be as successful as we think we might be, but I'm willing to get my hands dirty and come try it with you anyway. Like, let's try it.
there you go. And and that's great. I mean, having those conversations is very important. And I think also it's just the way that you go about also listening to the students,
Mhm.
what is it that they're wanting to do? Those activities that gives you also kind of as an instructional coach, kind of helps you gauge, okay, where are the students' interests right now? They want to interact
Mhm.
with, digital, but they also need something that's physical. So they want the visual, the kinesthetic. You want to hit all those multiple modalities. And as a coach, then we're like, okay, let's find some of those tools. And like you said, you already have your triad in your back pocket. You're
Mhm.
ready to go. So as a teacher may say, hey, I need an idea, or I need, something here. Oh, here you go. Let me show you what you can do. And that kind of ties not only to what the teacher has to cover, but it also
Yeah.
ties to the interest of the student. So therefore, you're still igniting that spark in the student. You're igniting that spark in the teacher, because then also the students become engaged. And I think that that's great. Sometimes, I think as being in customer service prior
Mhm.
to education, one of the biggest things is always to get customer feedback so you can always better your practice. And I think oftentimes we may overlook that all important resource, which is our very own students. as are
Mhm.
they, they are consumers of the curriculum. So why not get some feedback and say, hey, what works, what doesn't, and then that way you can kind of shape and adjust, adapt the curriculum to a certain way to
Yeah.
reach out to more and in more different modalities. So I think that's great, Amanda, that you're doing that. That's really going to help you significantly, and of course, with your teachers as well. And more than anything, building that community. I think that's so important right now. Where I was talking to you and saying, like, state testing came back before students did. You know, and
No.
and
Ugh.
that's just the reality of it, in a lot of places.
Yeah.
And those are the comments that I see in my Twitter family and everything. How can state testing come back before students came back full on, and now you're getting students just to come to school, just to take this test, and then go back, and it's just one of those things. But anyway, we do what we can, and hopefully, this will definitely help us learn as a whole, how education landscape has changed, and make some very all important decisions, and hopefully for the betterment of our teachers, for our students more than anything. Because I think, like we were talking earlier, one of the things, and I love that you said this because I never had this different perspective, but I'll let you kind of expand that a little bit more. We were talking about the term learning loss,
Ugh.
and that has been such a buzzword. And I
Yes.
think it kind of reminds me of a meme that's out there when they say the term learning loss. Like, I don't think you know what it means, or you're not using it correctly. And
Yeah.
I was in a conversation yesterday with and the Code Breakers Lounge, and it was a great conversation talking about failure and things of that sort. But they talked about the learning loss, and one thing that stuck out to me was when they said it there was no loss in learning, because learning still took place, although it looks different, but
Mhm.
they lost the traditional component of learning. In other words, you lost being in the classroom, you lost those activities, but your students are still learning. But if you can kind of expand on that, on what we talked a little bit about before the show. I loved what you said. So what are your thoughts on that, on learning loss?
I'm with you on the learning loss. I don't think we lost a lot of learning. I think we lost maybe a standardized ideal of the learning. But I do think after talking to my neighbors, because I live in the community that I serve, after talking with parents, students, teachers, we've all have learned so much during this time. Educators, administrators, everyone has learned so much during this time. And our students have just kind of tweaked their learning to be something a little different, right? We've learned in a different way because they've been home. I saw this quote, it was on Twitter, a friend of mine, Eric Leitner. He said something about standardized testing, just to kind of take it back to that for a moment. Our students aren't standardized. So, this idea of standardized assessing, maybe it's time to start shifting. Maybe it's time to start thinking differently about meeting our students where they are and meeting our teachers where they are and continuing that growth and that learning, because I really do feel, after talking with family members that have students that were at home, community members, my neighbors, just their learning has been different. They have learned how to make sandwiches. They've learned how to use measuring cups, which are fractions, right? They've learned how to get onto Teams and have virtual meetings, and how to interact with one another virtually, because we some of our students have interacted virtually, but not in a manner that we deem as appropriate, right, in education. I think we had lots of opportunities to have new types of learning, and I think if we take those opportunities and continue those opportunities for our students, and we build those experiences that are going to be relevant for their futures, we can jump ahead and get a little bit closer to where they need to be, so that they have their learning for their future careers. Because we know what it was, a statistic, like 80% of their jobs haven't been created yet, kind of
Right.
thing.
Right.
So I really do think this time was kind of one of those eye-opening um, times, at least I know for me, where I'm going, you know what, we can jump ahead, and let's take that opportunity to leap ahead instead of just keep going in a linear fashion. Let's
Yeah.
take these opportunities to jump ahead for students. So I don't subscribe, if that's the word, to learning loss at all. I'm gonna hit unsubscribe. If that's a YouTube
Yes.
channel, I'm done.
Yes.
I think we've all learned a lot during this time, and I really do think having those conversations are important with educators, and having those conversations are important with our students, and not just always having fun, because there's things that I don't enjoy doing on a daily basis, but having those conversations to make their learning relevant and meaningful is where we need to kind of get to with our kiddos.
Yeah. And I agree. I think that's something that's very important. And you hit on just a lot of great things there because, I mean, a lot of the students are learning those real world social skills that they need, and it said, unfortunate for a lot of students, just depending on their situation at home. I mean, you're right. You had students that are very young that had to now learn how to care for a little brother or maybe care for a grandparent, and see those things and be more involved. So that is something that is still something that is very important that the students are learning. Like you said, a lot of them using measuring cups. Wow, that's, guess what, that's a real world math problem right there. And oftentimes it's like, hey, how can we relate this to the real world? Well, you just did this whole year. You've been able to have the opportunity to relate your curriculum to a real world problem or situation where students can see that outside of the confines of their school and say, oh, so this is how I can apply this
Hmm.
here in the real world outside a school setting. So yeah, that's something that is very important. And also, like I said, I do agree with you. I do unsubscribe or have unsubscribed to that term, learning loss, because yeah, the learning still kept going. Um, One thing also was the testing. I mean, one of the things is that accountability still. There's teachers that are in the classroom that some of them were thriving and they're doing great. Some of them were still having some issues and some troubles because it's outside their comfort zone. It was difficult. But what state testing is going to do, like you said, one of the things is, number one, our students aren't standardized. They're multimodal learners, yet they give
Hmm.
them a unimodal test where it's all just A through E or F, H, J, K, whatever the answer choices are. But that's something that is also scary in the sense of, when you get this data back,
Yeah.
how is that going to affect? I mean, teachers are stressing out.
Yeah.
They're like, what if the students don't do well? What if the students don't do well, and what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And they're worried about the students, but they're also worried about themselves, because
Yes.
then comparison happens.
Yes.
And that's my biggest fear.
Yeah, I think I've said it here before, and I don't remember if it was Jesse Lubinsky or who was on with you, but I said, don't quantify your impact, right? And it's so hard because I'm like Alice in Wonderland. I give myself very good advice and I very seldom follow it. I'm guilty too. But thinking about, like, okay, we're quantifying our students' knowledge. And is that in a normal situation, right? And I'm seeing normal as like the past, right? Because everything now from now on forward changes. Is that what's how we want to define learning? And I think we really have an opportunity as educators and educator leaders, and when I say educators, I include everyone who's an educator from preschool all the way up. Um, it, we have an opportunity here to make some change and to make things that are better for our students. And I really, really feel deep in my capital T truth, is what I will say, passionate about education, and those of us that are innovators and creatives, and we want to share our knowledge with one another. This is our time to kind of make that change happen, take that action and support those of us that have more of a voice, maybe in those realms, to kind of make the changes for our students. And I feel you when you say the teachers are worried. They are very worried about that comparison, because that's been our status quo, and that's been our business as usual. And it's, well, this teacher is not doing so well, and this teacher, and it's like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. We can get valuable feedback from not just taking an assessment, But as educators, we can get a lot of feedback from our students by observing. It's going back to that anecdotal record kind of mentality from back. I mean, I remember my
Yeah.
teachers taking notes about, yeah, Amanda's not hearing the sound correctly. Oh, well, maybe she has a hearing problem. Yeah, absolutely, I do. So it's those kind of things that I think assessment kind of needs to change and kind of needs to make a big change and be individualized. I think Vygotsky had it kind of getting started that way, the
Yeah.
whole Vygotsky thing back in the day. But I think we kind of need to bring that back because we're asking our students to collaborate together. We're asking them to share. We're asking them to do things together, and then we're testing them by themselves, right?
Right.
I am not a good test taker. You put me on the spot, and I am not. I'm that kid, right? From then. But if you ask me questions and we have a conversation, you're going to learn a whole lot more than you probably want to know because
Yeah.
I'm very loquacious.
And but see, I love what you said there, because oftentimes as teachers, I remember when being in the classroom, I would write
Mhm.
down little notes, just for myself, just on particulars that I may see for that, a student or a group, and then maybe go back and assess and say, okay, did I teach it right? Did it come forward, or did it, come through the way that I needed to? Do I need to reteach? Or then just say, okay, or if I did do a reteach and then there were still maybe some students that didn't understand, okay, let's go to small group and see what's going on.
Yes.
But that is ideal. I mean, I learned how to do that just through business school, but I didn't go through the regular college of education. So I mean, I just learned that on my own because I needed to see and how to better myself. But I think now with the way curriculums are set up where it's like, here's your start date, here's your end date, and this needs to be done from here to here, and then after that it's standardized test. Teachers are probably overwhelmed and saying, I don't have time for that. I just
Yes.
need to go straight through and do what I need to do, because again, it all comes back to how did they do. But I think oftentimes if you don't take that time to know your students and build that community and kind of see, and like you said, all individuals, they learn differently.
Mhm.
You would probably have an easier time as you go through the year because you would be able to know and say, okay, I'm doing this activity, but here's how I can do a little additional spin to it for this group and try and hit everybody in the way that they learn. And I know we often advocate student voice, student voice,
Mhm.
student voice. Uh, but we don't practice it. A lot of
Mhm.
teachers don't. And I love that you said, a learning artifact. I've been, a big proponent of learning artifacts,
Yes.
whether it's my last years in the classroom. It was very seldom that I would give a test. I would rather give a project and
Right.
assess learning, and they would work in groups. And you're
Mhm.
able to see, that group collaboration. You're able to see an actual artifact, whether it was a slideshow, whether it was a video, whether it was a poster. But to me, what was most important was the explanation and saying, okay, this student learned and actually internalized the concept and not just memorized the fact. So
Absolutely.
that's something that's
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I'll go back to your thing about curriculum because again, I'm one to kind of break rules sometimes. I would use the curriculum as a guide. It was never when I was in the classroom. It was never like, for lack of a better term, the Bible of teaching. It was always that tool, right? And if we look at all of our things that we have as tools to teach, we're not teaching curriculum. We're teaching students, and we're also learning from students because I think I learned a whole lot more from them than they probably learned from me when I was in the classroom, and I'm still learning from them. It's that constant cycle of look, they're kind of my teacher and they're kind of my learners. And again, the same idea that you had with the project based kind of learning and the end product sort of thing, the summative assessment type piece. A lot of times I would have them create their own board games or, hey, what do you guys think about, taking small groups, and you can each pick a different style of project and give me a presentation, kind of an inquiry type model of what do you want to learn about? We're learning about ancient civilizations. Here's ancient Egypt. What would you like to study, right? Here's all of the different components that you have available. Come give me a proposal and tell me what you would like to do. Now, it's harder to do with the younger students right away, but you kind of scaffold that, right, along the way, and you take that inquiry process. And Trevor McKenzie is huge on the inquiry process. He's one of my favorite people to follow and to look at. He's got some great posters that you can look on his website and see. And he just he changed my mind when I was thinking about the way that I've always taught. I never knew there was necessarily a label for the way I taught. I just kind of organically flew with what my students needed. And don't underestimate the value of, how you give students those interest surveys at the beginning of the year. Read them. Don't just put them in a file drawer. Read them and look at them and maybe think, okay, this is my gamer students. Here's my soccer playing students. Here's my, my students who like to have more kinesthetic learning. Here's my video production crew. Here's my, I would take them and put them in different groups throughout the year based upon their feedback in their surveys. And then even just having them figure out what commonalities they had with one another, they would have that common experience and move. I was constantly moving my classroom. I drove the custodian nuts. I was moving them around. They were moving desks. We were doing math problems, moving desks around. We were constantly on the move. And that's one thing that distance learning was really a challenge with was, getting our students to get up and move and getting ourselves away from this device long enough to get up and move and do the things that we needed to do too. But yeah, just ideas again, just
Yeah.
sharing.
No, and it's so funny. I mean, everything that you said, it just really reminded me of just the way that I had my classroom too as well. Just, and that's to me is, I mean, I didn't learn that till like later in my career. I mean,
Yeah.
probably like within the last 6 years of being in the classroom for 11 years, because like I said, I just came in and I remember my very first year, they're like, they gave me 2 binders full of transparencies,
Yes.
and they were like, "There's just a transparent." Yeah, I'm kind of aging myself
That's
there.
okay. I remember them.
And then of course, and then you remember coming out, with your hand right there, all different colors. So
The
they gave me this binder.
vis-a-vis.
Yeah, the vis-a-vis. And then there you go. And then
Yeah.
it's like, okay, 1 transparency per day. You're there teaching. And of course, we move to the whiteboards. And but then you kind of just start developing, and I'm like one of those that I'm not a sit and get, like I need to go and learn. So then just kind of learning through research, or seeing other teachers, the way that they would do things. And um you know once I got into elementary, that's really where I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like the possibilities, because now I can move, like you said, move the students around, group them. They're kinesthetic. And that's probably where I learned a lot more of what we're talking about now, as far as allowing students to move. And my classroom was never a quiet classroom.
Oh,
And
no.
sometimes, it kind of came off like, does this guy even have like classroom management or anything?
Right.
I was like, my classroom, what, like they're all learning. I mean, they're all doing their activities, they're all working on their projects, but they're thinking out loud, they're collaborating. I mean, so just because a room may be loud doesn't mean that there isn't learning taking place. Just
Yeah.
as much as a quiet room doesn't mean that there's any learning taking place. Chances are it might be a sage on the stage kind of room where the students just sit there and they just receive and consume, but don't
Yeah.
create. So, it's important to give them those opportunities.
Yeah, I think you're hitting that nerve right here, because I'm feeling like I'm totally feeling you, Fonz. The one thing that I think we need to realize is that our students aren't vessels to fill. They are coming with knowledge and experience, and they're coming with different cultures, and they're coming with just ideas, and they want to share them. So giving them that space to share them, daily, weekly, however you can, is going to give you even more community and buy-in and excitement and creativity, and maybe they'll ignite a spark in you
Yeah.
as an educator. And really, that was been one of my biggest learning experiences, going from, from teaching in the classroom to instructional coaching across the district, is, leveraging what our students know and trying to adapt it and fit it into, okay, now how can I take this and run, right? How can I get them to game and make it educational? How can I, almost like think outside the box, not break the rules, but also maybe toe that line a little bit with them and see, okay, you want to be a podcaster, let's talk about this, right? Let's have this conversation. They have the best ideas, I think. Again, that's me. I'm huge with play and moving around. My kids were never in the classroom. They were outside my doors. Like, I could see them,
Yes.
but they were always everywhere. And like you said, someone would come in and be like, "What is this hot mess? Like, what's
Yes.
going on?" And I'm like, "Look, as long as nobody is sharpening 1,000 pencils a day, I'm good. That's my trigger. Don't sharpen your
Yes.
pencil all day."
Yes, yes, I loved it too because yeah, I wouldn't even move them in the halls, and then they
Yeah,
would be recording or they'd be,
absolutely.
filming and things of that sort. People are just walking by like, "What's going on?" It's like, "Hey," they're having fun, and it's that learning artifact of, seeing just their creation, and man, it's amazing. Like you said, I learned so much from them, not only how to use the tech better,
Oh,
thanks
yeah.
to them, because they would just, "Oh, did you know you can do this?" And then so I always tell everybody, like when we talk about this, is like first period, I kind of just introduced it. By fourth period, I was an expert, but it was because I learned everything from my students in the
Yep.
previous three classes. And that's what really, you can learn so much from your students. I mean, just giving
Yes.
them that feedback. And I think one thing that I love that you said about the vessel, I was looking for a quote. That's something that'll go with the show and the theme of igniting a spark. And I popped it in there in the chat. It says education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire.
Absolutely.
And I thought that that was great. It's like, we yes, we need to deliver the content, we need, but it's let them, ignite that spark with what you're doing and have them engage in the learning and see what they can do for you. I mean, that's I could eventually that's the way it is over here in the real world. I mean, once you get
Yeah.
into the real world, it's not going to be a standardized A, B, C, and D. It's kind of like, well, here's the situation. Let's figure it out. Well, now there's different modalities of figuring things out and getting to an end goal. And so, for a lot of students, I think the fact that you're standardizing that test from third grade on up, that's all they ever know. That when you put them in a situation like this, for some of them, they may be like, "Well, what do I do?"
Mhm.
Because they've always been, "Well, this is the way you're going to do it. This is," and they kind of get a little scared. They lose that creativity. I think we had this conversation with Trisha Poncio, and a lot of students lose that creative, just their creativity, or just because of this, it's always
Yeah.
test, 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 but they don't get to create. And that, to me, I think that we're doing a disservice to our kiddos by not giving them some opportunities to learn and play and igniting that fire and seeing what they can do.
I think with some of the up and coming ideas that are in the new mathematics frameworks. I know for California, at least, we have data science now, the NGSS standards, those kind of things. We have built in some more components, and I know there's even more cultural references and things in there. And especially with the history and social science frameworks, for at least for California, we have a lot of new learning to happen, but it's just at a kind of slow down pace right now because we don't want to overwhelm with all of the new learning that we have. We don't want it just to go in and not come back out and be a practice. So it's kind of that delicate balance, between teaching and learning and getting our teachers to just feel comfortable to say, I don't know. And it's just that simple thing of, there's been times when students will ask me a question and they'll say, "What about this?" And I might know a little bit about it, but I kind of reserved about it. And I say, "I'm not quite sure, but if you would like to give a presentation on that." And 3 days later they came back and they're like, "We're ready. Here's the marker, go up to the board." Like, however you want to do it, and they're running around the room grabbing things to demonstrate and model, and the kids are just glued to them. And I'm like, "Well, day 3, my job's done, and that was day 3 of the classroom reality. So just being able to say, I don't know, I've never heard that experience before, or
Mhm.
that's interesting, tell me more. Having those conversations, I think, are just valuable, and I keep coming back to that, but I think it's really an integral part of not
Yeah.
just turning the pages and going through the motions and why are we learning this fraction method or whatever you're doing. And I always go back to math because that's my brain. But yeah, just having those conversations with one another and with your students and
Yeah.
and
It
learning.
think like it's relationships. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's having those relationships, building that community.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, it seems like, I mean, every podcast, every show that I've done,
Yeah.
that word comes up: community, community, relationships, relationships. And, I think then there's something there. I mean, for a lot of us, we really need to understand, what building a relationship is. It's not just like, oh, okay, you're here. Okay, good. It's actually like, hey, how are you doing? And
Yeah.
personalize the learning and understanding your students. Because I think we had I think it was show number 8. Pedro Aparicio was here, and he said when we first started doing this, and he started this in Mexico because he's working out of Mexico. He would turn on the camera, and the first thing he said that what they would do is he would just talk to his students and say, because they're used to wearing uniforms to school, but not while they're remote. So
Mhm.
he would see them like with a soccer jersey, and he'd ask like, "Oh, I didn't know that was your favorite team. Tell me who your favorite player is." And then, with pets and getting to know them, he said after that, the rest of the school year was just great because we were all able to communicate and everybody felt like family. You
Yeah.
felt, and you would hold each other accountable and helping one another. So I think that's something that's definitely very important.
Mhm.
Well, let's go ahead and just kind of switch the subject here a little bit, because I know that as an EdTech coach, or instructional coach, you are very active, and I see that you are very active in a lot of certification programs. I see that you've got also like badges on badges on badges, so that's awesome because I'm a badge guy myself. But right now, or maybe during this time, of remote instruction, where now we're kind of maybe learning some different methods and so on, uh how do you continue to learn in order to stay on top of things in your role?
It takes time. So if anybody's out there listening, it takes time. So um, I think it's it's organically grown, but it's also passion for educational technology because as a student myself, as when I was 10, I used to take computers apart and do those kind of things, and I used to get yelled at for doing that because back then they were like thousands of dollars in Apple computers, and I
But wait,
think
were you taking them apart at school or at home?
At home,
Okay.
yeah, and I still do that. I still take electronics apart from the Dollar Tree and get the little circuits out of them and the panels and re-engineer. I just it's something I've always done, and I think it comes from that mechanical place. My dad was really into cars, so I was gapping spark plugs when I was like 5. But how do I continue to learn? I think just keep going, like just keep learning, and don't be afraid to ask a question if you're not sure what someone's talking about. And I'm the first one to admit I don't know everything and I'm never going to know everything. And I even as an MIE expert, I don't even like the title expert because there's no way I can know everything out there about every single program. But um, just thinking about, okay, what's coming next? And after having those conversations with teachers locally and not even locally, but throughout the globe, um, saying, hey, how's that working where you're at? Right. And asking questions and then getting some feedback from there. Okay, well, how's that working where you're at? Well, we do this. Okay. So always just keeping up to the next thing, the next idea. Um, Sometimes what we think is the next idea, someone's already done. And so it's on to the next idea and the next idea and the next idea. And I think some people are just chasing those ideas all the way through. And I'm one of those people that I go turtle power. I'm very slow. I'm like a slow reader. I probably have 15 books that I'm reading at once because I'll get bored with one and I'll switch to the other. But I think really as long as you're going at a pace that works for you, even if it's turtle speed, um, it's okay to just keep going. But then it's also okay to have that work-life balance because, like today, I told my husband, I need to get out of the house. Let's go to the living desert. Like, let's go do something, other than I'm still learning, right? I'm learning about animals because I love animals. But let's do something that's, you know, fun. I know fun is kind of like the negative word sometimes, but continue to learn just about different things. And if you learn one new thing every day, you've got 365, sometimes 366 new learning opportunities. You expand that beyond however old you are and you keep learning. But ideally, we're all trying to get kind of to the center of that our own labyrinth. And you might not get to that center of that labyrinth before the end of, your time on this planet at least, and you just keep going. If sometimes you have to go a little bit quicker, sometimes you have to go really slow. I'm the one I'm a proponent of slow learning is kind of like absorbing and thinking. And I'm a really deep thinker when I start getting into learning, and so not only do I have to read something probably 3 or 4 times before I get it, I have to make notes and I have to mark up texts and I have to maybe listen to it, a few times
Mm,
too, not just read it. But I think the more that you learn, um, the more you just grow your brain, and we can all learn more from each other because I can't know everything that you know, Fonz, and you probably can't know everything that I know. And so if we can collectively share that knowledge and be kind of experts in our own right, we can make the world a better place. And I think that's where our kids are going. I know they're going that way. And we kind of have to at some point give the learning over to them.
yeah, I agree. Like, I think that that's just a great thing that you just said there at the end, that you need to give the learning or turn the learning over to them at some
Yeah.
point, because again, it just makes things a little bit easier. I mean, I don't know. I think we're having one of those conversations too in one of the programs that I'm doing, and they're saying, okay, why do people do what they do? A lot of times, they're steered towards certain directions, either through a school counselor, or maybe they had a bad experience with a teacher that said, well, no, this isn't for you, and so on. And but there was something that they were passionate about, and so on. But what's the matter with turning over that learning to the students, and then they can go ahead and engage in their own learning and follow their own path and
Mhm.
follow that one thing that they're passionate about, and just continue to move forward, and maybe be the next big thing within that area. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of times the testing, kind of puts students into these boxes that they kind of feel like, oh, this is me. I'm confined to this, and this is the only thing I could ever do. And I'm not a big fan of that. It's just kind of like you. It's like I like to free flow. Like I'll go from one thing to
Yeah.
another because I always want to learn something new, because it keeps my brain active. It's a form of me to relax and de-stress,
Yeah.
even though I'm still using my brain, but it's something I'm following, something that I'm passionate about, that I know later on I can share with somebody. And so, yeah, like you said, sharing that knowledge collectively, I mean, that's just something that's amazing there too.
And there's that power in video games. I don't think people realize
Yeah.
how much. I'm sorry, I'm bringing it back to video games. My
Yes,
My
yes.
Jane McGonigal book is right behind me. It sits
Mhm.
there. Reality is broken. Like that is my gaming, just inspirational person, and just you can learn so much by playing video games. And I'm not just talking survival mode and Fortnite and things like that, because I like to play games like Tetris. I will never win Tetris. Tetris is one of those games that you can never win, but I love playing Tetris. I can keep going forever. I love playing retro video games that are side scrolling type games. The 3-dimensional things, which I know we're starting to go that way, and more people are getting deeper into VR and AR and things like that, is it makes me motion sick, so I have to limit the amounts that I'm on. But video games really, as learning tools and for learning, have this. exponential ability to teach our students in ways that they can relate to, and yet we don't have to teach a lot of those maybe soft skills or just real life skills that we've been talking about. Maybe they can go into, Mario and learn how to power up, and maybe you power up in a different way in real life. Maybe you go work out, maybe you go,
Yeah.
change your diet, maybe you do different things. And what we can learn from video games is just powerful. And
Yeah. Like I said, we had Chris Aviles, we had Jesse Lubinsky here also.
yeah.
We were talking about, esports and
Yes.
just the community that is built through there. It's a home for many students that, they may not be into band, they may not be into, sports, actual sports, but man, can they do esports? And that is something that right now is thriving. And I think that even most of the students, I think a lot of teachers figured out quite quickly who their gamers were in class because they were able to help troubleshoot some of the tech
Hmm.
and be able, it was like second nature to them that they were there, with meetings and helping teachers out. But I think a lot of the job skills there's a lot of skills there that you can gain. Most importantly, also you're working as a team. If you check out that episode with Chris Aviles, that he really dives in deeper, he talks about even, they work out, they do special diets, and follow because it's like you're actually training. You're an athlete, your
Yeah.
brain has to be functioning 100%. Your motor skills, you've got the mouse, you've got the keyboard, you've got your visual, kinesthetic, you're doing all of this. And it really, really is a sport. I don't care what anybody says. It's like, oh, it's a video game. No, it's not. It goes way more than that, way
Yeah.
more. Yeah, and so I've been trying to get Amon Green, on the show, but he's a very hard guy to get a hold of. And I message him on Instagram, and you're like, hey, I just want him to share a little bit about esports at the college level. So
Hmm.
if there's anybody out there that's listening though that may not be Amon Green, but is at a college level, maybe a coach or anything, please feel free to reach out because I would love to do a show. Or Amanda, if you know anybody, we would love to have them on just to talk about esports in higher ed and
Yeah.
how that built up from maybe high school, and now how those students are thriving in an industry because it's not just about playing video games like Jesse Lubinsky and Chris Avila said. You've
Yeah.
got people that are learning marketing,
Yes.
the business aspect, the journaling. You're kind of like the historian, but you're also, I mean, you're writing down, you're doing your write-ups, you're scheduling, you're learning coaching skills, you're learning these skills that are really so highly solicited in the workplace right now. And so it goes beyond just that game. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think if I were to go back and be part of the esports, like right now, if I were to start from the beginning, and esports were around when I was an educator, I really think I would be a shoutcaster because I love to talk, obviously, and I really just love sharing, like, excitement with people. And so I was thinking about that the other day. But education too. I mean, you've got education, like you said, you have business marketing, you have the planning, you have the management team, you have the
Mhm.
coaches, I mean, there's so many roles that are in esports, which I didn't understand until probably about 5 years ago when I walked into the local LA County Fair, and there's a hall full of people sitting in gaming chairs, not unlike mine, doing this thing that called esports, that I was like, what are they doing? Why don't they just go play the games themselves? Right? I had this feeling of, okay, somebody here needs to explain this to me. And I pulled somebody aside and I just said, to explain this to me. Why are you doing this, and what is this? Because when I was a kid, we had, Nintendo, I think was the one where you went to the mall and you
Yeah.
had a Sega challenge or a Nintendo challenge, or I grew up in the arcades. And so it was like, yeah, we did this to get your score on the tally board, your three letters up there. But yeah, really, it didn't click until I had that conversation and I pulled someone aside and I was like, wait, what? You guys are making what? What kind of, how is this happening? Who's giving you money? How is this happening? So, but I do think also there's that educational piece that if we are going to do the esport thing in education, the scholastic piece, we have that opportunity again to teach our students how to act online, how to be positive influences online, because there is that idea of there might be online toxicity at some point. So just teaching them how to act and react if they're faced with situations that are online that they might not be able to immediately respond to. So I do think I think games are just I say games are edumagical because I love my
Ooh.
spirit animal is a unicorn, and that's my edumagic.
I love that. They are. And I mean, we've hit on so many things. I think we're going to have to do a part two, so we can
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about esports and things of that sort. And, but yeah, but again, also, if you know anybody, Amanda, I would love
Yes.
that's involved in higher ed, because I really want them to talk about this, and maybe we can have a little panel, have you back on, have them, and just have a great conversation about esports. And so, last question before we wrap up here. What is your number one takeaway from this conversation?
Oh my goodness. Uh, there are other people besides me out there, as like yourself, that believe that we teach kids. We're there to inspire one another, and we're there to inspire our students and our futures and their learning experiences.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited for you to be here. It was a great way to start my morning. And I know for a lot of our listeners and those that will be rewatching or re-listening to this show, I mean, they're going to get just a great conversation, just a lot of excitement. And Amanda, thank you so much for being here with us this morning. I know it's very early for you over there in California, with the time zones and everything, but I do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here and just have this conversation. And like I said, just loving that we love education. We are trying our best to just, again, ignite that spark, just like you said, igniting the spark in the teachers, in the students. So I appreciate you being here, and everybody else that is watching or is going to be rewatching later. Please, visit our website at myedtech.life, myedtech.life. You can check out the rest of the episodes. This will be episode 57. So I'm really excited about that. But check out the rest of the episodes. Check out our merch. Drop us a review, guys. We'd love that. We've had some good reviews coming in lately that I've been sharing on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter at myedtechlife. Make sure that you follow Amanda also on Twitter. There you go. At it's Amanda Macias. So
Easy.
make sure, yeah, very easy. So make sure that you follow her as well. Connect with her, guys. She's a great resource. She's a great friend, and she's always willing to lend a helping hand. So you make sure that you follow her, guys. So that pretty much wraps up our show, guys. It was a wonderful, Amanda. Cheers! It was a
Cheers.
wonderful caffeinated conversation with you this morning. And again, thank you so much for everything that you're doing for education. And my friends, we will see you here next week. So make sure that you tune in. But until next time, stay techy, my friends.